I should have known something was wrong the moment my mom said, "It'll be a small dinner, just family." Her tone was too casual. Too practiced. The way someone speaks when they've already decided something for you, but they're hoping you won't notice. I hadn't been home in years. Not since I left for college and never looked back. I built a quiet life, a job, a one-bedroom apartment, friends who didn't ask too many questions about why I never talked about holidays. And now, suddenly, a message out of nowhere: "We miss you. Come to Dad's birthday." It's time we all moved on. Moved on from what, exactly? They never said it aloud. That's how it always was in my house. Even when it happened, when I was 13, and he was supposed to be helping me set the table, they never said the words. Just hints. Just sidelong glances and awkward silences when I stopped hugging certain relatives. They knew. Maybe not the full extent, but enough. And they did what they always did, pretended not to. I hesitated. But something inside me, some leftover piece of hope or desperation, made me say yes. Maybe I wanted to believe people could change. Maybe I wanted to believe they'd finally acknowledge what happened. Or maybe I was tired of running. So I packed a bag and boarded a bus. When I arrived, the house looked the same. Same porch swing. Same peeling paint on the garage. My mother opened the door and smiled like nothing had happened, like I hadn't vanished for 4 years. "You look so grown up," she said, pulling me into a hug. I stood stiff in her arms, catching the scent of her shampoo, lavender and something sharp, like lemon. Inside, the table was already set. My dad grinned from the kitchen, lifting a beer in greeting. I nodded, trying to smile. And then I saw him. Sitting at the head of the table. Wearing the same smug, calm expression he always had. My uncle. The one who used to rest his hand on my back for just a second too long. The one who leaned in too close, said things a grown man shouldn't say to a girl in braces. The one who followed me into the pantry the night of Thanksgiving and whispered things I didn't have the words for, back then. I stopped walking. My mother turned, following my gaze. "Oh," she said. "He's here. We didn't want to tell you. We knew you'd overreact." I stared at her. "You said this was just family," I managed. "He is family," she said, eyes sharp now. "And we're trying to heal." I looked at my father. He suddenly couldn't meet my eyes. The whole room, the whole day, the whole plan, they had all known. They hadn't just invited him. They had built the entire event around his presence. Around my silence. "I'm not staying," I said quietly. My mother stepped forward, lowering her voice. "Don't make this a thing. Please. Just be polite. Sit down." "He's willing to move past it." "He's what?" I blinked. "He's willing?" Her voice dropped further. "We're not choosing sides. We're just trying to keep the peace." That word. Peace. I felt something shift inside me. Something old and buried. It wasn't anger. Not yet. Just the cold realization that they had never protected me. Not then. Not now. They didn't want healing. They wanted silence. But I wasn't 13 anymore. And I wasn't going to sit at that table. Not for him. And not for them. I didn't go back to the guest room right away. I sat on the porch, hands in my lap, watching the wind stir the dying leaves around the driveway. Inside, laughter drifted out, faint, forced. The sound of a family pretending they were whole. Pretending they hadn't put their daughter face to face with the man who stole her safety and dared her to smile through it. Eventually, the screen door creaked open. My mother stepped out, her expression already tight with controlled disappointment. "Can we talk?" she said. I didn't move. She sat down beside me on the bench like it was a normal night, like we were just two people trying to understand one another instead of two people divided by years of quiet betrayal. Look, she started, we know what happened hurt you. But it's been a long time. We're not saying it was okay, but holding on to anger doesn't fix anything. I didn't say a word. I didn't need to. Her voice said enough. And, she continued, he said he's sorry. That he didn't mean for anything to feel inappropriate. That he was drinking too much back then. I turned my head slowly. So now it's just a misunderstanding? I'm saying, she replied carefully, that everyone remembers things differently. And this family has been through enough pain. Don't you think it's time to let things go? She paused. Let the words linger like they were generous. Merciful. I almost laughed. But it came out as a breath. You want me to let it go, I said softly, so you don't have to feel uncomfortable when he's at Thanksgiving. So you don't have to explain why your daughter doesn't come around. So you don't have to admit you looked the other way while I was dying inside. My mother didn't flinch. She just looked tired. This is your father's birthday, she whispered. Do you really want to be the reason it gets ruined? There it was. The hook. The guilt. The insinuation that I was the problem, not the man who put his hands where they didn't belong. Not the parents who said nothing. Me, the one who remembered too clearly, the one who refused to pretend. You're going to be asked, she said after a pause, to say something. Just a few words. Just acknowledge the past. Maybe even apologize for the strain it caused the family. I blinked. Apologize? It's not about blame, she insisted. It's about peace. Healing. Closure. I stood. Closure for who? She didn't answer. Just looked down at her hands, folded in her lap, like she was the one being wronged now. Like my refusal to perform forgiveness was some act of aggression. I came here thinking maybe you'd changed, I said, voice low and steady. But you're still the same people. Protecting the ones who hurt me. Shaming the one who said something. She looked up, eyes glassy. We're your family. No, I said. You were the people I lived with. Family protects you. They don't offer you up for the sake of appearances. Then I turned and walked inside, not to pack, not to shout, but to plan. Because the apology they wanted wasn't going to happen. But something else was. And this time, I wasn't going to be quiet. The guest room hadn't changed. Same floral wallpaper. Same creaky nightstand with the chipped corner. Even the same pink and white comforter I used as a teenager, as if nothing had happened since then, like time had politely stepped around this room while the rest of the world moved on. I sat on the edge of the bed and stared at the wall. Not crying. Not shaking. Just still. It's strange what your mind chooses to remember when it's quiet. I remembered the first time it happened. Not the worst time, not the most obvious, but the first time. A hand on my back that lingered while everyone else was in the kitchen. Fingers brushing just below the hem of my shirt as he whispered something I didn't understand, only that it felt wrong. I was 13. Just old enough to notice the difference between playful and invasive, but not old enough to name it out loud. And when I told my mom? She said I must have misunderstood. That he was just being silly. That I was at that age where I started imagining things. So I stopped telling her. It didn't stop him. He got better at it, quieter. A graze here. A comment there. Always when no one was watching. Always with that smirk like he was daring me to say something. And when I finally told someone at school, a counselor, my parents found out and shut it all down. Said I was overreacting, that I was going to tear the family apart. So I learned to live with it. Not to forgive it, but to file it away. Like a bad dream you pretend never happened because everyone around you is too busy smiling through it. Until tonight. when they asked me to apologize to him for the strain. That phrase had looped in my head since the porch, like a bitter lullaby. The strain. As if I were a wrinkle in the family fabric. As if my pain was just a wrinkle they needed to iron out. I lay back on the bed and stared at the ceiling, letting the memories come, not to punish myself, but to anchor myself. To remind myself that I wasn't crazy. That I didn't imagine it. That the scars I carried, even the invisible ones, were real. They wanted me to sit across from him and smile. To offer words like, "We all make mistakes," and "I just want to move on." But that version of me, the one who swallowed her voice, who sat through dinners with her spine straight and her hands folded in her lap while the man who touched her laughed about football, that version was gone. I wasn't going to offer peace to someone who never earned it. I wasn't going to apologize for remembering. I reached over to the nightstand and opened the drawer. Inside was a Bible, an old flashlight, and a photo of the whole family from years ago. He was in it. Smiling. One arm wrapped around my shoulders. I was smiling too. A frozen, trained smile. I stared at that photo for a long time. Then I slid it into my bag, not to keep it, but because I knew I'd need to show someone. Soon. Because if they wanted to reopen the past, I was going to walk them straight into it. And this time, someone was going to listen. The next morning, the air was thick with fake cheer. Eggs sizzling. Coffee brewing. Someone had set the table with bright napkins and a birthday banner that looked like it had been pulled out of the attic at the last minute. My mother moved around the kitchen like a sitcom matriarch, pouring juice, smiling too wide. My father hummed under his breath as if the night before hadn't happened. He arrived late, of course. The guest of dishonor. My uncle. Same smug half-smile. Same cocky nod in my direction. Like we were old friends. Like I hadn't spent the night staring at a ceiling replaying the ways he stole my childhood. My mother leaned over as I helped set plates. "Be kind today," she whispered. "Just a few words later, and we can all move forward." "Of course," I said. "Just a few words." She smiled, relieved. She thought she had one. That I had given in. But something was different in me now. It wasn't rage. It wasn't even sadness anymore. It was something colder. Cleaner. A kind of internal stillness I hadn't felt since the day I left this house behind. I excused myself halfway through breakfast, claiming I needed to take a call. I stepped out onto the front porch, phone in hand, fingers steady. I dialed. 911, what's your emergency? My name is Lydia Monroe. I'm currently at my parents' residence, 1142, Timber Creek Lane. I need to file a report. Historical sexual abuse. The perpetrator is present. The dispatcher didn't rush me. She asked questions. I answered each one clearly, calmly. Dates, names, prior attempts to report. I explained that I had documentation. Witness lists. Counseling records. I had prepared for this in silence, over years. I just hadn't pulled the trigger, until now. She assured me someone would be sent to take my statement in person. "Do you want to remain on site?" she asked. I paused. "Yes," I said. "I want them to see who called." When I walked back inside, the house was still buzzing. My uncle had launched into some story about his business trip to Atlanta, my dad nodding along, my mother pretending to listen. It was surreal, this theater they insisted on maintaining, where nothing was ever wrong as long as no one named it. I sat down and waited. 10 minutes later, the knock came. Firm. Deliberate. My father opened the door. 2 officers stood on the porch. He blinked, confused. My mother walked over, concerned. "Is there a problem?" she asked. The younger officer spoke clearly. "We received a report of past abuse occurring at this residence." We're here to speak with Lydia Monroe. Every head turned. I stood up. My mother's face drained of color. My father took a step back. My uncle, he froze. Just for a second. Long enough to know the show was over. I nodded at the officers. That's me. They invited me to step outside. I turned back one last time. My mother's voice cracked. Lydia, what are you doing? I'm doing what you never did, I said. Protecting your daughter. And then I walked out the door. I didn't cry. I didn't look back. Because for the first time in my life, I wasn't the one who should feel ashamed. I was the one finally being heard. The silence after I walked out was louder than anything that came before. I sat on the front steps with the officers, answering more questions while the air inside the house went still. One of them took notes. The other just listened. Really listened. It wasn't therapy. It wasn't validation. But it was the first time someone in authority looked me in the eye and treated my pain like a fact instead of a complication. They didn't arrest him, not yet. These things take time. Paperwork. Interviews. History. But the investigation was real now. His name was in a file. A case number. And the silence he had hidden behind for years? It had cracked. After they left, I stood alone on the lawn for a few minutes. I could see movement behind the curtains, my father pacing, my mother frozen near the kitchen, my uncle seated with his head in his hands. None of them came outside. I stepped back inside on my own terms. The room was colder than I remembered. No one spoke. No one even looked at me. Until my father finally cleared his throat. You didn't have to do that, he said. You could have talked to us. I laughed, just once. A small, bitter sound. I did. When I was 13. He flinched. My mother tried. She reached out like she was still entitled to some piece of me. You've ruined everything, Lydia. Do you understand that? No, I said. I stopped pretending everything was fine. That's not ruin. That's truth. Her lip trembled. What will the neighbors say? What will the family think? That you protected a predator, I said. That your daughter finally did what you should have done years ago. She turned away, shaking her head. My father sat down heavily, like all the air had gone out of him. And my uncle, he finally spoke. I didn't mean to hurt you, he muttered. I looked at him, really looked. A man who once held so much power over me, reduced to this shaking figure hunched in a chair. You knew exactly what you were doing, I said. You counted on everyone else staying quiet. He didn't respond. Because there was nothing left to say. I packed in silence. The guest room, the same one where I had once tried to sleep after what he did, gave up its contents without resistance. I folded the sheets, not out of politeness but because I didn't want to leave anything behind, not even an impression. When I passed through the living room with my bag, my mother stood in the hallway. You'll regret this, she whispered. No, I said. You will. Every time someone asks why your daughter doesn't come home. Every time you see his name in that file. Every time you set a table and there's an empty chair. She didn't follow me. No one did. And as I stepped off their porch for what I knew would be the last time, I felt no weight dragging behind me. Just air. Just space. Just the clean clarity of having finally broken the spell. I didn't ruin their family. I exposed what they'd built it on. And I wasn't going to be the foundation they kept stepping on. Not anymore. I didn't go back to the city right away. I rented a room in a quiet town 2 hours away, tucked between hills and farms where nobody knew my name. The kind of place where the grocery cashier says hello without expecting a story in return. Where silence doesn't feel like avoidance, it feels like rest. The first night there, I sat in the unfamiliar bed and cried. Not because I was broken, but because for the first time in my life, I'd said everything out loud, and the sky hadn't fallen. I wasn't a child anymore, curled up under bedsheets hoping someone would knock on the door and ask if I was okay. I was the one knocking now. I spent the next few weeks piecing my life back together, not from ruin, but from clarity. I found a local therapist who let me talk without flinching. I volunteered at a shelter once a week. I started writing again, essays, journal entries, even letters I'd never send. Not to forgive, not to forget, but to take back the narrative. The police called me once for a follow-up. The case was moving slowly, as these things do. But it was real. It had a number. A detective. A timeline. And the more time passed, the more I realized that justice wasn't just about punishment. It was about truth existing in a place where lies once ruled. I didn't call my parents again. Not when the holidays came. Not when I saw old family photos floating around online. Not even when my mother sent one final email with a subject line that just read, "Can't we talk?" I didn't open it. Because I didn't need more talking. I needed peace. And I had found it. Peace wasn't the absence of conflict. It wasn't folding yourself into silence to make others comfortable. Peace was the moment I stopped apologizing for surviving. The moment I stopped editing my past just to keep someone else's image intact. Peace was paying rent with my own money. It was making dinner in a kitchen that was mine. It was falling asleep without a locked door. It was walking through a world that didn't question whether I was overreacting, because I no longer let them. Some nights, I still wake up from the old dreams. The hallway, the whisper, the hand. But now, when that happens, I get up, I make tea, I open the window, and I let the cold air remind me, I'm not there anymore. I left. And I never went back. I adopted a cat. Named her Justice, because it made me laugh. She doesn't care about my history. Only that I feed her and let her sleep in the sun. And somehow, that feels like enough. I've started sending out some of the essays I wrote. One got published last month in a small online journal. The editor emailed me after and said, "Your story hit me like a brick to the chest. Thank you for telling it." I saved that message. Because it reminded me, my voice matters. It always did. And now, finally, I use it. Not to scream. Not to explain. Just to speak. And that, more than anything, is what peace looks like.